closely related to the interaction problem for substance dualism is the pairing problem. But rather than asking how immaterial minds interact with material bodies full stop, this objection instead asks why it is that immaterial minds only causally affect particular bodies. Why, for example, does my mind affect this body as opposed to any other body, or for that matter, any other physical object? Why is it that my intentions can raise my arms, but not anyone else's, or even just raise inanimate objects like cups and rocks? To say that I can raise my arms because they are mine is a circular explanation, since to say they are mine is just to say that I am able to causally affect them. As Jaegwon Kim explains, it is metaphysically possible for there to be two distinct physical objects A and B with the same intrinsic properties and hence the same causal potential or powers. Further, one of these, say A, causes a third object, C, to change in a certain way, but object B has no causal effect on C. Now the fact that A but not B causes C to change must be grounded in some fact about A, B, and C. Since A and B have the same intrinsic properties, it must be their relational properties with respect to C that provide an explanation of their different causal roles with regard to C. What relational properties or relations can do this job? The only plausible answer seems to be that it is the spatial relation between A and C and between B and C that are responsible for the causal difference between A and B with regard to C. At least, there is no other possible explanation that comes to mind. Just as a preliminary, notice again how this objection exclusively applies to interactionist versions of dualism, and not to dualism as a whole. As with the interaction problem, let us again begin by observing that it is utterly unclear what exactly the problem here is supposed to be. Kim asserts that the spatial location which one object bears to another is the only plausible explanation for how one object can move another. But to whom exactly is this supposed to be plausible? No doubt the physicalist may find this plausible, but the substance dualist most assuredly does not. And given that this is supposed to be an argument against substance dualism, it cannot rest on premises which are only acceptable to the physicalist. I may have no idea how it is that I am appropriately paired to my body, such that I can causally affect it, but not other objects. Yet I can still know that I am appropriately paired in this way. Kim has not shown any contradiction in the dualist position, nor has he shown that it is improbable. As David Lund argues, as to the why question, if that is one about understanding why the mental event should have these physical effects rather than others, or none at all, the answer must lie in pointing to the relevant covering laws that in fact have been found to obtain. The impression that such an explanation is not sufficiently deep may remain, but it should at least come to appear entirely ungrounded with the recognition that physical causation admits of no deeper explanation. Explanation of physical causation, too, must come to an end if there are maximally inclusive or absolutely fundamental causal laws that cannot be explained by recourse to laws more inclusive or more fundamental. We can explain, nomologically, the pairing of certain events, whether physical or mental, by subsuming them under a law of nature, and we can, in many cases, explain a natural law by placing it in a network of more inclusive laws and/or theories. These more inclusive laws may turn out to be explainable by way of an appeal to even broader laws and more comprehensive theories. But if, as it seems, the claim that the process of appealing to ever more inclusive laws or theories might be infinitely regressive does not merit serious consideration, then we are entitled to conclude that there is a point at which this process terminates in all-inclusive or fundamental laws that cannot be explained by appeal to something else, simply because there is no something else to which one can appeal. Leaving this point aside, Kim's objection seems to me to rest wholly upon the utterly unjustified assumption that only a spatial relation can account for the pairing between two different entities. But even if we accepted this assumption for the sake of argument, it's not even clear that it would falsify substance dualism, for the substance dualist might wish to maintain that souls are in fact spatially located. The key strategy here involves drawing a distinction between an object's being spatially located and an object's being spatially extended. While being spatially extended entails being physical, being spatially located does not. And so with this distinction in hand, the substance dualist could maintain that immaterial souls are spatially located with their bodies, and that this accounts for their being paired together. Rickabaugh and Moreland suggest as much when they say, virtually all contemporary substance dualists believe the soul is spatially located, even though it is not extended. Some provide arguments for the soul being located in one specific place in the body. Others believe that the soul is to the body as God is to space, namely fully present at each location in the body. Either way, the spatial location requirement is satisfied. And once again, as with so many of the objections to dualism, the pairing problem can be turned right back around on physicalism. As Brenner explains, according to Kim, the substance dualist must provide an answer to the question of why souls enter into certain sorts of causal relations with some bodies rather than others, since the pairing cannot be brute. Kim argues that the dualist will be hard-pressed to put forth a satisfying answer. So too, I claim, those who believe we are composite objects will be hard-pressed to put forward satisfying answers to questions such as, why is this composite person composed of these parts rather than some other parts? And why do these parts compose this composite person rather than some other composite person? More importantly, those who identify us with composite objects have no response to the mereological pairing problem that cannot also be appropriated by the substance dualist in response to the pairing problem for substance dualism. So, once again, we have a parity. If pairing problem concerns undermine substance dualism, then they also undermine the view that we are composite objects. And if pairing problem concerns do not undermine the view that we are composite objects, then they do not undermine substance dualism. In summary, the pairing problem fails for at least 4 reasons. In the first place, even if successful, it is only an objection to interactionist versions of dualism, and not to dualism as a whole. Second, the requirement of a spatial relation to explain causal pairing is just completely unjustified. Third, the substance dualist is free to take the position that souls are in fact spatially located, although not spatially extended. And fourth, to the extent that there is a pairing problem, a corresponding mereological pairing problem exists for physicalism, meaning that this cannot be a strike against dualism in favor of physicalism.